Welcome everybody back to Velo Sound. Here we have not just a really cool artist that I like a lot, but also somebody who's been on the show before. So I'm very, very pleased to have ALN from Mizmor back on the show again. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So the first question here is always, what is the band merch that you're wearing today?
Oh shit. It's actually not band merch. I'm wearing a Tolkien shirt.
Oh,
Um,
can you pull it up a little? Is that his face?
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
It's a shirt that was printed by Dylan Walker from Full of Hell. He does some
Ooh, for everybody,
really
also
cool.
somebody that we had on the show a few weeks ago.
Nice.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
cool to see the face because it's not the old Tolkien that we might have seen from other pictures, but it's a very young one. It looks like he's a
Yeah.
student at that point. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you watch the Benedict Cumberbatch movie about his early life when he, for example,
No,
joined the war? It's a
I
really good
missed
one.
that.
I'll send you the link afterwards. It's not the best of movies, but you can see where he came from and what turned him a little bit into who he was. So, and yeah, before
Yeah.
anybody asks, my shirt of the day is Mastodon, Georgia.
Hell yeah.
Um, is that a band that you can get into?
Actually, I liked me some Mastodon on my journey into heavy metal for sure. I really liked the Leviathan album in particular. Uh so yeah, I don't really keep up with them anymore, but I think I revisited that album within the last couple of years, and I mean a lot of it's just kind of undeniably good.
Yeah,
The riffs are just good, you know. So the drumming is phenomenal, and
definitely.
yeah, there was a time and place for that in my life, and I think some of it still holds up.
I mean, like I know that you're a multi-instrumentalist, and you've already spoken about the drums. Is there What is more to your liking, or what do you listen to more, the drumming in a band like that, or the riffs, or everything?
I think I think eventually I listened to everything, but at first I always noticed the drums.
Mhm.
It's the first instrument that I learned. It's the one that's kind of in my in my blood, in my being. I feel like a very rhythmic, percussive kind of person. So I usually, my ears perk up and notice the drums first a lot of times. And then
Mhm.
I start to notice everything else about the production and the composition.
But remind me, it's not the way that you write your own songs, right? Because I think I remember you told me that they're basically, first of all, riffs or
Yeah,
guitar parts.
that's right. Yeah, I write on the guitar first for songs, but I do record the drums
I
first.
know.
So yeah, there's a little bit of a trade off there, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't sit around writing beats and then think of riffs to go to them. It is the other way around.
Yeah. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting twist. So, when I was sitting here and I was thinking of questions to ask, and I always like a good icebreaker. So, my question for you at this very moment, also a little bit in relation to your record, do you think that you're living a prosaic life?
In some sense of the word, yeah, I think that we all are. I
Mhm.
think that there's plenty of excitement and interesting things to be talked about life, but there's sort of a base reality, a base layer of experience that is just experience itself.
Mhm.
And no matter how exciting your life is, you still get up every day and put your feet on the floor and work and get through
Mhm.
the day. And
Mhm.
the passage of time and the sort of daily grind is kind of what that title alludes to. And I think no matter how interesting of a person you are, you're still one day at a time getting through life in the same way that everyone else is.
Of course, every breath we take is the same kind of breath that everybody else takes, of course. But at the same time, isn't this time right now, I mean, like we're talking in the summer of 2023, isn't that an exciting moment for you? I mean, like you've been on magazine covers of big magazines. You have had cover stories. You have had long texts in many magazines that are very well known. Isn't it also some kind of exciting at this very moment to be ALN, to be Mizmor?
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm really thankful for all that stuff. Really excited about it. It's kind of, I guess I'm not really as much touching on the sort of things on the surface like that with the title or the ethos of Prosaic. I think it goes a little bit further below the skin. It's more of I think a meditative sort of approach to understanding. I know I just kind of said some of this stuff, but the passage of time and your perception of yourself within experience, within time, and the purpose that you ascribe to your life, and the purpose and futility of work, and just kind of dropping back and living in the moment and recognizing the raw experiential data of consciousness that is before concepts and things like being on magazine covers and whatnot. All very exciting stuff.
But as I said, you do recognize that in our little realm of music at the moment, Mizmor is the hot shit, right? You notice that, right? I hope you do, because you deserve it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've noticed an indicator or two of that, and the whole prosaic idea is not a negative one to me. It's not a criticism of saying, "Oh, life is boring or simple," and that's bad. I actually think it's rather good, or even just neutral.
I mean, like, it's also fortunate that at this point in your career, I mean, Mizmor is now, I think, what, 11, 12 years old as a project?
11.
11. It is cool to see that these things have not turned into something prosaic for you, which is, first of all, your character, but also second of all, it's a development of a project, which is cool to see. I like that a lot. So the new record, I mean, like, we've dropped the name now already often enough. Prosaic, it's out there. I mean, like, this is being published at the end of August. The record has been out for a few weeks. And it's a really, really interesting record. 4 tracks, somewhere around 46 minutes, if I calculated it correctly, which is not unusually long or short for your standards. But the whole record, to me, feels a little rougher, a little harsher around the edges. Is that intentional, that it's a little more straightforward?
Yes, absolutely. That was the idea. For me, Prosaic started as an approach to making a record, a different approach than I had practiced before, and a very different approach than I had practiced recording Cairn, which was my last full length. And even though there are some other releases in between, Prosaic kind of leaves off, resumes where Cairn and Yod before it and whatnot kind of left off as full lengths. And so it started to me as this idea of wanting to make a record without obsessing over it, without it becoming ultra precious, without me having to suffer as much to make it, without, having to feel like it was very, very polished, like I felt like it was a masterpiece, or any of these sort of feelings that you may get when you work for a really long time and stress about all the tiniest details and then release a piece of art. I wanted to, out of sheer curiosity and also out of self-love, see if I could make a record and just share. I just wanted to share, without having some big, epic, grandiose concept or presentation. I wanted this record to be more from the hip, more slice of life, more straightforward. I wanted to trim the fat. I wanted it to stay punchy and interesting, and for the process to be fun, and to not lose myself in the process, lose perspective, wondering, is this good enough? Did I do this enough times? Did I troubleshoot all the problems? Is it as close to perfect as possible? That's one way to make a record, and it is a
That
good
you
way.
have already done often, right? Yeah.
But I've done that already. And, when you make enough records, you just become curious about making records in other ways. And I hoped that I could get to the end of this Prosaic process and have a record that I was proud of, that I thought was very good, that I wanted to release, that other people would like.
Mhm.
So it was a big experiment to see if I could suffer less and have more fun and simply share, as opposed to, like, digging up all this trauma and angst on all the audio sonic details and whatnot, which, there's a line there. Of course, I did my best on this album, and saw to it that things sounded good. But I tried to find that line of, like, beating a dead horse and saying, you know what, I think that's good enough. Let's move on, and just try to keep it, not get stuck, not let myself get stuck. So that's what the approach was. And so, yeah, it was very intentional to have the album be shorter, more straightforward, like you pointed out.
It's also interesting because it's basically the first record that doesn't have any kind of overarching concept, especially no religious concept or religious background, to which we'll come in a moment. Quick and easy question. Was that a liberation process for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've spent about a decade processing the experience, the trauma of losing my faith and developing a new worldview in the absence of that faith. And it was a long, painful process. It took a lot of work. And I feel like through my music, first and foremost, I honestly have processed that in a very therapeutic way. And I've received closure and healing and acceptance over this issue. And I just don't really have anything else to say about it right now.
Don't
And
get me
I
wrong. It's cool that you don't
feel,
have to.
yeah, I feel free to talk about something else. I feel like it doesn't have to be my identity. And yeah, I mean, there'll always be, I'm interested in religion. I'm interested in people's stories about losing their faiths and leaving their religions. That will always be a conversation I'll be a part of. But at the moment, I just don't feel like there's anything more that I need to process. And I don't want to, wallow in some pit of recursive self-pity. I would like to just talk about something else.
Which is very, very cool, because I also think that at the same time, I don't want to get too much into your life story before, because I think that is also not part of what you want to say. But I think that you have spoken. You just said it. It's like you had to come to terms with what you have lost and with the trauma that comes with it. But at the same time, when I look at you now, when I hear you talk, when I also listen to the record, I have a feeling as if ALN is now living very much in the present, and is also not only trying to enjoy life, but also is actually enjoying life. Whereas a lot of the other records that you've mentioned, I do not want to say they're stuck in the past, because that's not the case, but they were dealing with the past. So I like this transition. And would you say that at this very moment you are, for lack of a better word, the happiest you've been in a long while?
Probably, yeah. That's don't get me wrong, it's almost daily struggle still. I mean, I struggle with depression and anxiety, and I manage those things. I am, I know what's going on there, and I have mechanisms to deal with them, but that doesn't take them out of my life. And I, I think I've come to a place also with those things of acceptance,
Mhm.
and I, I'm finding more victory or more ease over not reacting as much to those things' presence in my life. And so when a bout of depression shows up at the door unannounced, um, it's easier for me not to be upset about that.
Mhm.
It still happens, but there's not this secondary, now I'm upset
Mm.
about being depressed. That
Mhm.
I'm still working on it, but that's something that is improving a little bit for me. And so, yeah, I feel liberated from God, and am constantly seeking to improve my experience, and thus the experience of those around me through more or less living in the present moment, which is a huge theme on the record.
Would you go so far as to say that you also liberated yourself from yourself? In a way that you are not obsessing, as you said, you are not obsessing over anything that's past.
Yeah, I don't think I would go that far, though. That is interesting and probably desirable. And I do
Mhm.
actively work on, um, I don't know, kind of dropping back and noticing the self as another experience in consciousness,
Very
and
interesting.
not necessarily who I am or the whole of my identity. Um, and that is liberating, very challenging to continually keep in view.
Mhm.
Um, but I do think another theme of the new record is kind of shedding illusions,
Mm.
and I do think that the self, in a lot of senses of the word, is an illusion, and
Yeah.
that we can eliminate needless suffering from our lives by not constantly identifying with our thoughts and feelings, and paying closer attention to what experience itself feels like in the present moment,
Mhm.
free of the concept of self that almost instantaneously gets brought into it.
Now we're revolving around this liberation thing a lot, but do you think as if you also have, in a way, freed yourself of the oppression of expectation? Because let's be clear, whenever a Mizmor album is announced, up to this very point, many people have expected you to have a look at your former past, at religion, at belief from a certain point of view. And now you don't do that. So, is it also like freeing yourself from the pressure of all these expectations?
Yeah, probably a little bit. I don't know that I'm totally free from that, but definitely making the record that I want to make,
Which is an awesome
first
record.
and foremost. Thank you. I still really hope that people will go there with me,
Mhm.
and that people will like it. And when I say that, I mean that, like, obviously I want people to like my music, but I've gotten to the place with Mizmor where I no longer feel like I'm only making the music for me.
Mhm.
It starts that way. It is first and foremost that, like a journal for me. But I think that how much cooler is music and art when it is important to other people, when it affects other people positively. And so Prosaic is also for other people. It's a record about daily life, and it's very I think everyone can relate to that in a sense. And my hope is that what I'm doing is bigger than me. So I'm sure there's some sort of expectation baked into that somewhere, or pressure. But I just hope that I can make, something honest that touches other people for the better.
I'm pretty sure it does, because this is the first time that you, as you said, are also in a way talking to other people, not about yourself, and try to share a few things that are common amongst all of us beings. And at the same time, you've already hinted at it. Like, Prosaic is a very programmatic title. And it's very interesting because I have a feeling, and I hope you can correct me on that. It's a very, no, it's not a very normal word in German, but it's used pretty often, Prosaic in German, Prosaic. And in German, it has been the connotation of, okay, it's something of a less important nature, it's less detailed and elaborate, and it's especially a little less of everything on a philosophical level. So it's not as highly philosophical. Let's say it's a little bit more Kant, the German philosopher, than, for example, Nietzsche. Does it have the same kind of meaning in English in general, or for you? A little less elaborate,
Yeah,
a little less programmatic.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I think for me, like, I chose the title because I'm trying to celebrate plainness. There doesn't need to be anything special. Um, you can live a simple life. You can keep your head down and just work and make an honest living. And there doesn't need to be anything epic or grandiose or
And you can still be a
necessarily
good person,
special.
right?
Yeah, of course. And your life can still your life can be full. It can be overflowing with satisfaction,
Mm-hmm.
and happiness, with just doing simple tasks. And I think if you zoom far enough out and look at life, I mean that's what everyone's life is. We are just doing tasks, and of course there's meaning that we attribute to that. But whether you're doing something that most people see as incredibly important, or whether you're just doing chores, there is an inner disposition of mindfulness and appreciation and things like that, that make even the most seemingly mundane activity potentially incredibly profound.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I'm getting at, and applying it to my own work as I'm setting out to make a record. I don't want this to be some epic masterpiece record. It's going to be just honest and plain and simple, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know, and that feels good right now. So it's kind of, yeah, just trying to celebrate, like I said, like plainness. Like, I guess the other connotation in English that we have is like uh poem or verse, uh versus prose, uh
Yeah,
prosaic.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's kind of, it doesn't need to be like a big romantic poetic thing.
Mm-hmm.
It can just be gritty and real,
Mm-hmm.
working man, fucking daily life, and that's interesting to me.
Would you say that in a way this record is for possibly, maybe everybody, every plumber, every builder who just simply likes metal? Whereas a few of the other songs and records you put out were a little bit more on the philosophical side.
Yeah, that that's kind of the idea, and
Mm.
I think you can probably still argue that that's very philosophical,
Yeah.
but you know, it's kind of zen in this way.
Mhm.
You know, meditate. It's about it's about a lot of things. You know, as you pointed out, there's no overarching central concept, but yeah, I don't know. It's just about mainly about focus and not succumbing to distraction, and
Mhm.
being content.
Mhm. Before we
And I think
talk a
that's
little, yeah, you go
simple.
on first.
I just was, and I think that's simple, and
Mhm.
perhaps that's profound and philosophical. But
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be. That's the
Mhm.
interesting part.
Last question before we talk a little bit about a few of her titles on the record. I'm just seeing that wonderful Wits End cover on
Oh,
the wall right next to you. Would you say that this record is also your, in a way, your reply to the idea of being at your wits' end? The answer being be present.
yeah, I haven't thought about it that way. Um, I think in that sense, it can be the answer to a lot of things. I think that the sentiment behind Prosaic is there's a lot of acceptance there. And so, you know, be it you're at your wit's end, for example, like you brought up. I think the reply from Prosaic in that situation, and many situations, is like, yeah, okay, so what?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's that doesn't have to be such a big deal. There doesn't have to be an additional judgment on top that says, well, that's really bad, and I
Mm.
am this feeling and situation, and I'm really bad, and so on and so forth. You could say, well, I'm having the worst day. I'm so depressed today. Okay, so so what?
Accept it and move on,
Now
right?
what? Now
Yeah,
what? That's okay. That's okay.
yeah.
So that's kind of the reply, I think.
I like the easiness with which you say it. Let's talk about a few of the track titles, because I unfortunately haven't had the luxury of having the lyrics to the album, but I think a few of the track titles are also in a way self-explaining. The first track that you put forth on the record is called Only an Expanse. And here, is that also something that we should be aware of? You know, we are only as much of an expanse of the same thing as the person right next to us. You know, there is not any kind of level between us up to a certain point.
Yeah, that's very true. For me, Only an Expanse is primarily about the passage of time and the illusion of time. I mean, time is real in a sense of the word, but I think often we are telling us this story ourselves, this story of time as a linear structure and ourselves within time, and we perceive that we are at this point, and behind us is the past, and in front of us is the future, and we're worrying about the past, we're worrying about the future. But if you drop back and pay close attention to the present moment, there actually isn't a past and a future. There's only an expanse. And I think that being in touch with this other facet of reality, this more raw sense, can free us from some needless suffering in our lives as we kind of break that narrative and break that linear timeline and just become more attuned to sensory data as it's coming in the present moment, and not worrying as much about what will come or what has come before us. These things are illusory in the present moment, and there actually is just this expanse of consciousness.
Very interesting that you connected to time, because what strikes me a lot of people experience of the present, the past, and everything in the future is that they are perceiving present and past as some kind of chopped up expanses. And because of that, ignoring the fact that all of it is just simply one process, that we haven't ended yet, that we haven't chopped off from anything yet. It's just one ongoing expanse of time. Is that also something that you feel that a lot of people are trying to ignore, this process of life?
Yeah, I think that, you know, these songs are things that I'm telling myself, advice that I'm giving myself, things that I'm
Are
working
you a good
on.
listener?
What's that?
Are you a good listener to your own advice?
Sometimes. So, you know, it is, you know, sort of advisory for folks in general, but it also for me. I'm not like, haven't figured all these things out or anything like that, but I think you put it well, and I think that it's an attempt to break the automatic cycle of identifying with our thoughts. And a lot of times this has to do with worrying about things in the past or things in the future. And yeah, just kind of breaking that spell for a moment can be helpful.
When I think about what you've just said, and when I then think about a track title like No Place to Arrive, it makes me wonder whether you feel or whether you share the notion that a lot of people, not all people, but a lot of people are trying to arrive at a certain point, at a certain destination, at a certain goal that they have. And that, because very often a lot of these goals are unachievable, they are becoming dissatisfied with life, with the present, with this expanse in the middle. So is there some kind of linear thought between only an expanse and no place to arrive?
Yeah, I think they're related. I think no place to arrive uh, is about, yeah, kind of what you said. Like, I think oftentimes we tell ourselves the story of, oh, well, if I could just A, B, and C, then I would X, Y, and Z, or, be happy or not suffer as much or be successful or whatever. If I could just get there, if I could just do these things, then this, then that. And I mean, obviously, you should have goals and make plans for your life and whatnot. Um, but I do think that this type of thinking can stifle us. We sort of make excuses as to why we live in a suboptimal way right now. And there actually isn't like the grass is always greener. Like there isn't that patch of greener grass that you're going to get to, and then your life is going to be free from suffering. There's always going to be a to-do list. There's always going to be things on that list. There's always going to be things to worry about. There's X, Y, and Z. It's always going to be an open problem in life. And you're never going to get to the spot where problems don't exist anymore. And the reason why this is important to realize is because, once again, it can help you come back to the present moment and realize that actually the moment you're searching for is available to you right now. So that's kind of what that song is about.
I'm like,
you're already here doing the thing. This is it.
Yeah.
So don't fantasize about being some place or time elsewhere. In fact, that's just a dream, and you're already in the place and the time that you're looking for. If you could just realize that.
Would you say that this strive for more, that this trying to become more, trying to achieve something else, would you say that that is also in some kind of way depreciating one's present self because of putting too much emphasis on future things? That people don't value themselves enough?
Yes. Yeah. Or don't value the experience of the present moment enough. I think we're just too often we are subconsciously led around by the narratives in our head, and we think without even knowing that we're thinking, and we're just walking around lost in thought. And I think that is like a huge veil in front of the living life to the fullest in the present moment.
Well, it surely is not a veil of sound, everybody. I had to take that one, right?
Yeah.
No, but I see what you mean. And it's also the in a way the illusion of thinking, the illusion of, okay, I'm thinking about something, while at the same time I'm not actually thinking, but I'm striving. I have this primal feeling as if I need to be more, get more, have more. Whereas thinking a little bit less about property and status might lead to a more positive mental health, right?
Yeah, like what if this present moment, what if life in general was enough?
Mm.
What if it was good enough and there wasn't some problem that you needed to solve all the time?
Mm. You have mentioned it, but now it just strikes me. You have been talking about Zen and about mechanisms. Are you doing stuff like meditation, like yoga, like trying to calm down for the present?
Yes,
Cool.
I do meditate, and sometimes that is more formal, and sometimes that is just implementing the practice in my daily life of mindfulness. But yeah, I'm trying to train my brain to be different, in a helpful way to myself and to others. Because if I'm constantly walking around suffering on the inside,
Mm, mm, mm,
that isn't just bad for me, that's bad for everyone that I love. I'm not
mm,
a good, helpful version of myself for them. And so, the brain has lots of neuroplasticity. You can actually change the neural pathways and how your brain works, but it takes practice and making new habits and techniques and whatnot. And I'm still a very novice student, but I do try to uh, implement practices in my life that encourage me to live in the present moment, which I believe eliminates needless suffering for myself and those around me.
um, and the last title that struck me because it's musically, I think, a little different from the other three, but also because it's the last track on the record is Acceptance. Um, do you think as if we should accept more?
I mean, put in such a general sense, it's hard to say, but I definitely think that for myself, and yeah, probably for others, it's paradoxical in this sense of like you ought to practice acceptance, but you should also strive to make the world a better place, make your experience better, make experience better for others. So it's a fine line between acceptance and complacency.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is something I'm still actively exploring. But I do think, just from personal experience, that my life has improved uh, since I've begun practicing acceptance in a few different areas, at least, of my life, which largely has to do with my mental health, my mental state, and becoming less reactive, uh, and less judgmental.
It's always fascinating the way that these conversations with you develop because one always ends up, and that's also something that I always end up with while listening to your records. One always ends up with a lot of things to process. But something that we should not forget to talk about is the music that is backing all of these highly philosophical and not really too prosaic ideas. Um, what I noticed, and it might be because of bad earphones, like bad headphones, um, but it sounds as if it's much more direct, especially the drumming. Um, is that just my notion that the sound is also more direct, that it's closer to us?
Hmm. That's something that I've continually evolved in Mizmor.
Mhm.
Um, Cairn was my first attempt at making a record that was more direct, as you say,
Mhm.
sounding, which is like loud, punchy drums that have no
Mhm.
reverb on them.
Yeah.
The vocals also loud. There's effects here and there, but for the most part, it just sounds like a voice clearly right in front of you, screaming at you. I find this to be really intense,
Yeah.
and I like that there isn't as much to hide behind. There isn't a bunch of extra space imparted by reverb, creating a sort of amorphous wall of sound that you can mask things with. I like how bracing and gripping it is to have, you know, little effects or effects only in intentional specific spots. But for the most part, the artist is just in a room, in your face, playing something. And that's, again, what I strove for on this record. I think the only difference is just like the compositions are more straightforward, and the sonics, like I'm still working with the same mixing and mastering engineers, but our processes have evolved in the last 4 years. And part of that, at least on the mixing side, I know Sunny has incorporated a lot more analog gear and really like pushed sounds really far on this record to get, you know, the sort of highs and high mid range of this fizzly, crunchy, effervescent, you know, ripping kind of sound to the distortion of the guitars and the spit of the vocal. I think that has come alive more.
Definitely.
And I think that is a really intense sound that also makes it sound more direct. And I love that.
Just a question. Is it just, as I said, my bad hearing, being close to 45 now? Or is there really a certain drop off in volume of the drums after like the first, let's say, 30, 40 seconds?
Oh, I have no idea. I've never
That's
noticed
just
that.
my hearing,
Yeah.
But I really like this directness. And I didn't want to say spit in your face, but as you've already mentioned, that it's really as if I'm standing right in front of you, there's maybe like a yard between us, and you're screaming into the microphone, and I actually feel while you are exhaling and throwing the words at me. That is definitely something that is much more direct on this record. It's also shorter in a way. I mean, like one track is only 8 minutes. What happened? That is nearly pop radio formatting.
Yeah, it's the shortest Mizmor song ever.
Yes, and it's still 8 minutes and a little bit.
Yeah.
But as you said, that was an intention, right? To chop off a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I typically make like hour-long full lengths, and I just feel kind of tired of that right now. It's just so long, and it's really cool. I appreciate the experience of like, you got to do the deep dive. You can't listen to it in passing. You sit down, you listen to the whole thing. It takes you on a journey. All that has been intentional. But man, it's just so, I don't know, self-indulgent in this way. And I wanted to get in and get out, say what I had to say, and keep it fresh and punchy and interesting. And I've also, since Karen, I've become a producer for other bands, and so it's got my brain working in different ways of like asking myself, has this been going on for too long? Is this interesting? Is this fun? Is this engaging? Does this accomplish the goal that I want it to accomplish? So I'm kind of more actively producing my own records now. And I don't know, I feel like 30 minutes is a little too short. You want more. And an hour is just a little bit too long. You start checking your watch, and like maybe 45 minutes is like the perfect length of time. So that's where my head was at.
So then we two have to hurry right now, right? And I'm not cutting anything from my sheet. I actually only have one more question before we come to the quickfire round. You have already, and that is something that is very pragmatic and prosaic in a way. You have already announced a lot of tour dates for the US. When can we see you in Europe?
Hopefully next year.
You know who will be standing front row, left side, like not dead center, but
I'm sure, right?
yeah, you can bet on it. You can bet on it, my friend.
Awesome.
So, ALN, first of all, thanks for the insights, for the mental, how should I say, for the food that you delivered to the brain once again. A lot of things to process and think about. And just like last time, we come to the infamous quickfire round. And I actually revisited our first interview so that I don't ask anything again, because that would be kind of embarrassing. And I also want to start off with something philosophical, just like I did last time. But this time, I give you two alternative philosophers. Being a stupid, stubborn German, I just simply give you two German philosophers, Nietzsche versus Schopenhauer.
Well, I'm not super familiar with Schopenhauer. I know a little bit of Nietzsche, so I guess I'd probably have to pick Nietzsche. I know that's a disappointing answer, but
No, it's not. No, not at all.
not as
There are
educated
no-
as I ought to be to answer that question.
No, actually, it was short, and you said like only 45 minutes, so we got to hurry. I'm very sure I know the answer to the next one, but I still ask it. Roadburn or Psycho Las Vegas, which is more to your personal musical taste?
Oh, to my personal musical taste. I mean, I think Roadburn, Psycho Las Vegas is awesome, but there's so many artists. It's very diverse and eclectic, which is one of the cool things about it. Um, but Roadburn's a little more niche and happens to be more just kind of the stuff that I already listened to.
I looked a little bit at the people that you've worked with, and I saw that a lot of them do quite a lot of collaborations. And so I wanted to ask you, which vow collaboration do you like more, the one with HIRS or the one with Great Falls?
I haven't listened to either of those. I would say the Thou record with Emma Ruth Rundle is probably the best one. The first one with the body is pretty good too.
Yeah, that's the problem with Vow, right? They just simply put out too much, especially like that stuff, right? Okay, but then let's ask otherwise. If you had to choose one Vow record that you would put on right now, which one would it be, Magus or Rea Silvia?
Magus.
Another collaboration from one person who lives close to you, Chornobog versus Abyssal, who did a collaboration which is awesome and I love it. But I would like to know, which one do you like more, Chornobog or Abyssal?
I would have to pick Abyssal there. My homies from Tijuana. I love them as people. I love their music quite a bit.
And another collaboration, and you've already mentioned them without knowing, two people or two bands that like to collaborate with others. The Body versus Uniform.
That's tough. I think I'd have to give it to The Body there. My Portland homeboys.
We have spoken about two Seattle bands in the last one. So if anybody wants to know the answer to that one, you have to listen to that one that we did for Wits End. I'll give you two of the other two of the big four grunge bands, Soundgarden versus Pearl Jam.
Oh, easy. Soundgarden.
What do you enjoy more, recording your own stuff or other people's stuff?
They're both really cool and hard in different ways. I probably enjoy producing other bands the most. It's really fun. It feels like if a band brings me on as producer and they're uh, open about inviting me in to give my opinion on the composition and arrangement and not just like the tone of everything. I think that is the most fun because it feels like solving a puzzle of like what a song wants to be or what an album wants to be, and I really engages my brain in a way that I enjoy immensely.
By the way, I forgot to ask that, but the last time we talked, you were just finishing up your nice studio there, and you were about to have the first people record in there. How busy are you nowadays with recording and producing other people?
Oh, not super busy. I do like maybe 2 projects a year
Mhm.
because I balance that against all the work I have to do for Mizmor and also go on tour with Hell and other artistic projects. So I usually do, yeah, like 2 engineering or producing gigs a year, and I'm good with that.
Mhm. You've just mentioned the touring aspect of music, and I know that we've already spoken about that before when you did not have as much touring experience as you have by now, and also more experience with Mizmor as a touring act. Is it still the way that you enjoy writing more than touring?
Um, I think they're both just necessary and different parts of the process. I think they're kind of apples and oranges,
Hmm.
as the saying goes.
Yeah.
Um, I think I probably do enjoy writing and recording a little bit more than touring because touring is so physically and mentally challenging.
Mhm.
Uh, with playing shows almost every day for a month and living in a van in a hotel and whatnot, it's just very hard. But it's also insanely fun and rewarding because that's when you get to go connect with people that like your music, be in the same room with them, and have the live experience, and also just spend weeks with your best friends being goofballs. So they both have their ups and downs.
That listening, or no, do you think that there is always a certain point by which you should have gotten into something, into a band or a movie or whatever, or otherwise you're never going to get into it again?
No, not necessarily. And so, maybe I'll become a Neurosis fan. It's very possible. But like we were talking about grunge bands. I didn't start liking I liked Nirvana since I was a kid, but I didn't start liking Soundgarden and Alice in Chains until I became a metalhead.
Mhm.
I thought that their music was very cheesy when I was growing up. I made me think I just hear people singing in grunge voice and I think of Scott Stapp and Creed and I just wrote it all off. And but then once I got really into metal, realized that at least those 2 bands, Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, are pretty fucking metal.
Yeah.
And so I know a lot of people got into metal through grunge, but I had to get to metal first and then go back to grunge and go, okay, this is actually pretty heavy and cool. I get it now.
Mm. So would you say that that is also like most that metal is still the stuff that you listen to most, or is it now becoming much more diversified?
I listen to metal. It's probably, I don't know. Most of the time I listen to like calm ambient music. I'm like really into the new Sigur Rós record right now. I
I
listen
haven't
to a
listened to
lot
that
of
one yet. I still have to do that. You like it?
listen to a lot of I do, yeah. Listen to a lot of Brian Eno and Enya and like calm stuff. And that's probably like half the time, and then the other half is like metal or metal adjacent.
It's interesting how, and that is something that I also think, because both you and I, we weren't there when Eno got big, but I think that is something that is also a good example for the answer that I had before. I think it's impressive how many people got into Brian Eno after his heydays. Um,
Hmm.
and that speaks a lot to the quality of his music, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I hope that it will not take a lot of people as much time to get into your music as into Eno's music, because I think, it would be cool to once in a while see an artist who deserves it get what he deserves in a positive way. I think you're on a good track, a lot of attention, a lot of great songs on this record, which is an unusual record for Mizmor. And I can only tell people like when this comes out, the record has been out roughly 4 or 5 weeks. If you have not listened to Prosaic yet, finish the next 30 seconds and then go on to your streaming service of your choice and listen to the record. It will tell you a lot about human life, its value, and how we should appreciate it and live it. If you liked what we did right here, if you like this interview, then drop us a comment, maybe here on YouTube, wherever you listen to it, or drop us a line on our socials. We're always thankful for any kind of feedback. If you like what we do a little bit more than just dropping us a line or two, then you can visit our website, check out how to get onto our Patreon, where you can get the interviews 2 days earlier than everybody else. And so what is the last thing for me to say is, ALN, it's been a little bit more than 45 minutes, I'm sorry. But I'm very, very happy that we had the time. And I'm very thankful for Prosaic. So this is your chance for any final last words.
I just wanted to say thanks for having me on. Thanks for the talk. And yeah, I hope everyone enjoys the record.
Hope they do. Have a great day, my friend.
Thank you. You too.